chat open, so if you have questions, just raise hands. Or I think we're a small enough group, you can just turn your mic on and start talking, or just put things in the chat. So going back to the PowerPoint. So yes, our goal is we want to parallel between AgriLife research and extension. The process will be very parallel to each other, although we will have separate committees that will be making, advising the director's office and department heads as well, as we see in the process, advising them as to what you believe the contributions and performance of the candidates are. So we'll go through some of these items. First of all, there is a promotion and tenure page, and I'm going to go to that now. And in that page, we have, if you'll go to, and you'll see the URL that's listed there. And this is what it is when you go to that page. And so when you look at that, you'll see that it is has all the different forms that we're going to talk about today. It has the processes and including the calendar. So just to kind of see where we are in the calendar, let's see if I can make this as big as possible. So if you look at the calendar right now, it is June 2nd. And so today we would have had, at this point, our May 16th was close of business. The departments needed to submit the midterm dossiers through Interfolio. Alyssa will be on here to help us kind of talk through Interfolio in the near future. Then we are in the process of just looking at them to make sure that those are complete. And in fact, on the extension side, we have done that because we only had 2. So we've already done that. So our peer committee could start as early as next week. But the official time for the peer review committees to be working is between June 7th and July 7th. So 30 days to complete those reviews of midterms. And then you'll also see that's the reports from the committees. The peer review committees will need to be uploaded into Interfolio, and that's done by the chairs by July 7th. And then we'll do the review of those. Department heads will review that. We'll show you that on the schematic here in just a minute. And then it'll eventually get to the directors, where by late August, you'll see late August here, the associate directors and directors will make the decision as to whether that person is on a positive trajectory in their promotion process. And that's really what we'll be assessing at this point. Just to kind of continue just for a minute, I want to just step back here in the full promotion process just to make sure you keep your calendars open. And the dates that will receive those promotion dossiers are by September 22nd. So they would have to have been received. We'll check those over. And so between October 4th and November 3rd, that's when the committees will review those documents and write reports and present those reports, where those reports will be uploaded by close of business on November the 3rd. So please keep and notice that's, you know, some of the hot times that you're going to be working on this committee. And really the only main times will be right now until July 7th, between June 7th and July 7th, and October 4th and November 3rd. So Sandy, anything to add to that?
No, Dan, I think you covered that really well. Are there any questions at this point? One of the things I'll just mention is we tried to do the timetable, the calendar, to keep it as aligned with the university calendar as possible.
So departments' deadlines for on the college side will be the same. That's right. So you'll also notice in this document there is a section for college guidelines and resources, but there's also now a Texas A&M AgriLife Research and Extension Service policy set of guidelines, and all the documents that we'll talk about that you may see in the packets, they're all described in this portion of this particular web page. So it's a good place to go and place that we send candidates to look for information regarding putting their packets together, as well as just the full process. This first one AgriLife research and extension guidelines for promotion process. That's the entire process described. That was put together through a working group of both AgriLife research and AgriLife extension faculty, associate department heads, middle management, center directors came together. And the process that we're going through today is what has been put forward in this particular document. You'll see down here the department guidelines. So as you look at this page, just for you to notice, some of these have been updated and some have not with the new guidelines. So just keep that in mind. So you might, from the department standpoint, they may not necessarily reflect the most recent promotion process. Most of them have, but not all of them I don't believe have. So just know that. And so any questions about the web page? Okay, so why don't you talk us through, Sandy, the next two, which is mentoring committee and promotion description.
Okay.
Motion, yeah, position description.
Okay, so I'm assuming that most of the people that we have here today have served on a promotion review committee at some point in their career. And again, one of the things that is we're going to emphasize as being very important is the mentoring committee. And usually when a new faculty member comes in, the department head or the center director will help the new faculty member identify people that can serve as good mentors and can give them advice. Mentoring, I can take the person out for coffee, we'll answer their questions, we'll help direct them in the right direction to get things done, get their careers off and running. And so the mentoring committee is very useful for the candidate as far as preparing the dossiers for promotion. So you can see where we've listed the responsibilities of the mentoring committee, and that's assisting the candidate in developing their dossier. I've done this many times where I've reviewed the 3-page statements. I've done this where I've given insights into their curriculum vitae, into parts like that, and just given my opinion on ways to improve it. One of the important things, and this is actually, I think, an improvement now that we have the peer review committees, is constantly be thinking about who are potential external reviewers that the candidate may want to ask for a letter of evaluation. And that may change over the course of their career. They may identify, oh, I'm working on this particular aspect. And as they evolve through their career, there may be their research or extension may evolve, and there may yet be other people that might be more appropriate for reviewers. But the mentoring committee can kind of help the candidate sort of narrow that down and keep track of it, because we need at least 4, but no more than 7 external letters for promotion. We don't need those for the midterm review. So what we have going on now, we don't have to worry about any of the letters. Again, the chair of the mentoring committee. Oh, yes, question? And so again, the chair of the mentoring committee, if you're an extension faculty, AdLoc, usually is an extension, AdLoc scientist, and vice versa for research. Faculty should have a rank higher than the mentee. The mentee can have anyone they want on their mentoring committee, who they feel comfortable with and who they feel can give them worthy advice to help them along. They can come from other department centers, units as deemed appropriate. And I think that's part of what the center director and the department head help discuss with the candidate. And again, what's nice is annually the mentoring committee, and it can be as a group or it can be individually, has a discussion with their mentees and just kind of gives feedback to the department head or the center director or the unit leader, just how you feel the person's doing. I mean, we always go through the annual performance reviews where we give feedback directly to each faculty member, but oftentimes the mentoring committee, due to your more experience and wisdom, will identify things that might be very useful to help the candidate be successful. Our goal is to make sure the candidates are successful. And so with that, any questions on the mentoring committee? It's there to benefit the candidate. Okay, I don't see anything. So one of the things that Dan and I are emphasizing more is the position description of the candidate. And basically, when you think about what AgriLife researchers do and what AgriLife extension specialists do, we have a very diverse portfolio of areas that we work on. And so in trying to improve and remove as much implicit bias as to what we think somebody should do, we're trying to gauge each candidate against their position description. So the position description is the document of record, and these are discussed and altered or updated during the annual performance review every year. At least they're supposed to be. And so that's what the peer review committee for each candidate, you will have that position description. After reading that, that is what you're going to gauge the success of the candidate against, what their duties and responsibilities are. And so again, we're just emphasizing it needs to be current and it needs to accurately reflect the duties and responsibilities of the candidate. There may be an instance where someone is asked, we lost somebody, can you, a faculty member to retirement, can you teach this course? Or can you cover this other crop? And their position description should give them credit for stepping up and doing that, because that will take time away from all their other responsibilities. So that's why it needs to accurately reflect what they're doing. And again, the annual performance evaluation is usually the time of year where those alterations are made. Did I miss anything, Dan?
No, that's good. Yeah, I think the key is from your standpoint as a committee, the first thing you need to do is look through the position description before you start looking at the rest of their dossier. And we'll go through the other parts of the dossier here in the next steps. So this is basically going through the two different committees. So what you'll see, both for extension research, regardless of how you look at it, you know, the candidate, they're responsible for everything in the red circle down below, getting their process in place, department heads making sure documents are in place, and in the case of full promotion, they'll make sure external letters, the department head will be responsible for external letters as well. And then it goes to you. So that's where we are. So on midterms, they're right now uploading those. They've already been uploaded. The dossiers have been uploaded, and now we're going to the peer review committee. And you as a committee will write a report on that person based off of very similar to what you may have done if you've been in the college, you know, looking at not necessarily what you're looking at, but the process. And going through and having a primary reviewer and a secondary or a couple secondary reviewers, and then talking about it as a full group. But the peer review committee, they're charged with producing a report describing the key areas of that person's job responsibilities and the performance that they have shown in the time since the last promotion, or since, in this case, since they began their career as an assistant professor. Then it's going to go up to, so you will write, that report will go to the department head, and if appropriate, a center director, possibly a unit leader if it's somebody that's outside of department, such as Family and Community Health has those as well, what we call unit leaders. But those supervisors will look at the materials of the candidate, look at the external letters, and look at your peer review documents that you have put together on the candidates. They will use that and review that, put together their letters, and upload those to Interfolio, which will then go to the director's office. And both Sandy and myself, associate directors, and the directors will look at those. And as you can see, if you're 100% research or 100% extension, it doesn't really matter. It works the same way as far as going through, same process. If you're 100% research, it's totally driven by the research side, and the peer review committee is the sole peer review committee. And if you're on the extension side, then that group that is the extension peer review committee would be the sole peer review group of 100% extension people. And then it would pass through on the extension side. Now we do have joint appointments, so I'm going to let Dr. Pearson take the hard job and describe joint appointments. Because in this case, for midterms, we're going to have a nice tryout. We're going to have at least one person that has a 75% extension, 25% research. And so in that case, both committees will be engaged. So I'll let you take it from there, Sandy.
All right. So thank you, Dan. And again, if you'll put that little oval in there again. Now, what's in the oval is what the candidate does, and if you get questions from the candidate, nothing has changed as far as the current protocol at this point. So it's the same as before. The candidate submits their dossier, goes to the department, the external reviewer letters get obtained by the department head where they're required, again, not for the midterm, and then that gets uploaded into Interfolio. And so the candidate doesn't see any difference. What we've had to change was the process subsequent to the candidate being in Interfolio. So in the case where you have a majority minority appointment, 75-25, 06-07 or 07-06, then that dossier goes to both committees. Now the candidate's major ad hoc appointment, and I'll just say, let's say it's 06 for AgriLife Research, the 06 peer review committee drives the evaluation process and writes the letter in evaluation of the candidate. In that particular case, the minority, in this case, extension peer review committee, would also review the dossier, examining the important aspects for their extension appointment, and will write a report that they will be submitting to the research peer review committee. And that's I don't know if we call a sub-report, but report will be included in the majority report that moves forward to the next level of supervisors. And again, vice versa, if it's a 75% extension person with a 25% research appointment, the extension peer review committee will write the major report and will be in charge of that. And the research peer review committee will write the sub-report based upon the candidate's role in their research program. And then the extension peer review committee will incorporate that into their report that then moves forward. The diagram actually makes it look, I think, more complicated than it really is, you know, if you think about it. So, but I haven't been able to figure out a way to make that a little more simple. But does that make sense?
Yeah, and we did have one question that came up.
Okay.
Who was that? I'm sorry. I can't see questions on my, I saw a hand come up, but I didn't see.
Okay, yeah, please speak up.
I raised my hand earlier. I have a question. On 06, 100%, the report goes to center director or the department head? Because department head is not the real supervisor for 06, 100% 06 appointee.
It's a very good question, and we're doing it this way because what we're trying to do is we're trying to give the candidate as basically an overall picture of the candidate's accomplishments. So the center director, if the candidate is located at the center director has the best idea of how the candidate supports the mission of the center. Now, in the case, but they're affiliated with a department. So the department head can give the viewpoint of how the candidate supports the mission of the department. So we should get a more balanced evaluation of the candidate from multiple perspectives. That's our goal, is to do it that way. Now that there are AgriLife researchers and there are AgriLife extension specialists that are on campus.
Right.
So in that case, the department head letter would be the sole letter that comes out from reading the peer review committee.
So if I understand correctly, let's say in my location, for example, let's say somebody from, it's not a location specific, you know.
It's what we, yes, in the past, it's been like I, as a department head for 13 years, I would write letters of evaluation of candidates, and I would do them for research, for university, and for extension, and those would be submitted. But if somebody's located at an off-campus site, I don't feel I have the best perspective of everything that candidate does. So I can give the viewpoint of how the candidate benefits the department. And that's why the center director or unit leader would also be writing a letter. And the idea.
Will be a separate letter, or will be in most cases in my department, department head basically shared the letter and they kind of jointly wrote kind of like that. So
we're asking for both of them to submit a letter and giving the opportunity to both submit a letter.
And I think that's a very good point, because in my role as department head, I have had times where I've written my letter and I'm very open to sharing it with the center director. Sometimes it comes back with the center director just co-signs my letter, but I think that does a disservice for the candidate, because I'm not commenting on all the contributions they're doing to the center, because I don't know what most of those are. So the hope is that you're going to get two letters that are going to give a bigger picture of what the candidate does.
Thank you.
Oh, good question. That's what we want. Good. Keep that up. So again, going to what you're going to see when you go to Interfolio, and we'll have Alyssa talk us through Interfolio here in a minute. But what we're putting in there, first of all, there will be for midterms, there will be the position description, a 3-page summary, and that summary will serve as a document that will talk about their major contributions, their philosophy of research or extension, depending on their appointments, why they do what they do, and how they've established themselves as a leader in their field, as well as how any particular impact that they have made in that time frame. And then, in addition to that, an annotated CV. So we have another hand up.
Yep. So, Jane Wong?
Yes. Actually, I wanted to back to the previous question.
Yes.
Since, well, of course, before, when we off-campus people are promoted, that was with the department, the P&T. So that's why department head wrote the letter. But now, since we're separating, and based on our annual evaluation, we usually evaluated primary by the resident director. So the annual evaluation letter is written jointly by the center director and the department head. And in my case, primarily always the center director. So I think probably since we're separating with the department, the P&T, then I think it is fair that the resident director should do the main letter, and only one letter, and with, of course, agreement with the department head. Probably that would lighten the workload of the department head. What do you think?
Well, that's a very good point, and it's always been, having been a department head, being responsible for 02 and 07 faculty, but not having direct control because of 06 faculty, because they're under the control of center directors and resident directors. But in my 13 years of experience, I've always given input both ways, and I think a letter could simply be that I'm not, if somebody says, I agree completely with what Dr. So-and-so at the center, let's say Dallas, is indicating. But I do want to also emphasize that the candidate guest lectured in 3 courses for my department. And it could be not a long blown out letter. It could simply be something that the center director doesn't emphasize, but the candidate's putting in the work to do. And so in that case, the department head letter is acknowledging the contribution of the candidate. It doesn't have to be, a 3-page letter. It can simply be a short, in addition to what the center director says, I want to emphasize the other contributions. And so it doesn't have to be a real long one, but these are the things we're trying to work out in this new protocol. So these are great questions that you're coming up with.
Good questions, and part of the process as we get done with this, that you can say, hey, we need to do it this way. I would say that I have seen most departments do it. There are quite a variety in the way that departments handle this. And I think this standardizes it by allowing them to both write a letter in support. And we'll see if this works or not.
I'm just trying not to, my goal is not to overlook contributions by limiting the supervisors that comment. That's all.
Thank you.
I think there might have been another question. Is there another hand up? And again, I can't see names, so.
Right. I see a hand pop up and then it goes away. And
So you might talk through annotative CV, what
Okay.
that like.
all right. So
See that on both sides, extension.
so the third document, position description, 3-page statement by the candidate. The third document will be there, and we call it an annotated curriculum vitae. And the reason being is that, and this is just an example I put up, I tried to redact everything, but you know, a CV usually simply lists your publications or your reports or things like that. But you may be the first author, you may be the third author, you may be the corresponding author. And if you just look at that, you may not have any indication about the contribution of the candidate to that particular scholarly work. So what I ask faculty to do is to give the citation for the papers. You can see 2018, published in Plant Cell. And in this case, the person put the journal impact factor. And again, for extension and research, it could be different emphases. But in this article, we highlighted emerged as a premier model system. So it's not simply you count a publication, but you can see how the publication fits in the context of the science. And also, what I ask is when people will also include my direct contribution to this work is. So you may be the fourth author, or you may be the fourth co-PI on a grant, but that paper or that grant may have never occurred if your expertise wasn't there. And so the annotation allows you to explain your contribution, and it just takes a sentence or two. So that's why we call it an annotated CV.
You might talk through other tables that they might see, and we'll get to the funding table here in a minute.
Yeah, this is a publication table that oftentimes people will put in a CV. I didn't want to use anybody else, so I used me as an example. And so it's just I just did a Google Scholar search and just put down H-index and I-10 index. And again, that's weighted differently by different departments, by different subject areas, things like that. And then I just showed the journals that I publish in and just kind of give a feel for the breadth of areas that I publish in my work. And so that's just a way that people can see contributions based upon, and again, the Extension Peer Review Committee will probably weight these numbers differently than the AgriLife Research Peer Review Committee. But, you know, it's just a way to, I always tell my faculty, I don't care where you publish if you're reaching your target audience. You know, the publication needs to reach your target audience. And so that's what I want candidates to get across. Dan, you want to talk about the grant?
Okay. So yeah, on this one is we wanted to give every opportunity to talk about funding. Again, extension and research used to have separate documents for many of these things that we're seeing today. We put them all together. So research and extension will use the same document. You may see put different weights on these items between extension and research, just like on the publication side. But we wanted to make sure we included that. And so, you know, if you might notice type of financial support, grants, contracts, user fees, gifts, and in-kind contributions. So the goal here is what have you brought in from an external support and even in-kind support basis to help support your program? And then a title, the funding source, whether it's external, internal, international, and then, you know, how the dates of the funding itself, the total amount, and then what's directed to the candidate. Now, when we talk about directed to the candidate, I think talking with Sandy, you may actually get dollars moved into a specific account under your name, but I know that often it doesn't necessarily work that way. While you, again, might be responsible, for example, I was responsible for a 3-phase project. I had project 2. You would not ever see any money actually in an account with my name on it, but I spent out of accounts and managed the graduate students in that account. So I was responsible for phase 2. And so the funding that was specifically for phase 2, I would put in this category, even though you would not necessarily see it under my name. over in Maestro or one of those famous or one of those systems. And then also, not all grants are Hatch or USDA or NSF. But if you do have that information, we're just encouraging you to put that information. Not all grants are Maestro grants. You know, gifts are not going to fit that category, and in-kind are not going to fit that category. So if they fit, and you have that information, we would include. We have told them to include that, but it's not necessarily required. Particularly if it isn't applicable for that funding source or that source of support. So, Sadie, anything else on that?
I think that's good. I mean, you may get in the research side, you may be funded by NSF to sequence the genome of a plant, an animal, or a microbe, but the money doesn't come to you. It goes directly to the center that's actually doing the sequencing. So you don't actually have an account with your name on it because it's basically passed through to the center. We want the faculty member, the candidate, to get credit for that. The other thing Dan and I were doing is when we've been exposed over the years to academic analytics. And of course, we all know academic analytics doesn't capture certain types of funding. It's getting better, but it misses things. And so this is a chance for the candidate to make sure things are not missed. So again, our goal is to give the candidates every opportunity to get credit for all of their contributions.
So of course, we won't be doing external reviewers letters this time for midterms, but we will do them in the future, and we'll probably revisit this in more detail. But ultimately, many of we have opened up, just kind of bottom line, open up the source of external letters. It's not just AAU. It could be other universities that have leaders in that particular field. It could be USDA people or other government people as well. And so it's not strictly AAU faculty that's in this particular case. So we've opened that up. So you might notice that in some of the letters in the future as they come forward. Also, there might be a COVID-19 statement. So just know and look for that as you're going through as committees.
And I think again, this is what we're hoping is an improvement, because I mean, I've had faculty going up for promotion, and guess what? The world expert wasn't at an AAU institution. Might be at the International Rice Research Institute, might be at another land grant university that's not an AAU university. So, but if they're the person who is the expert in the area and can give a really thorough evaluation of the impact of the candidate on the field, we don't want to rule those people out. So we think their opinions are important.
So I think that, regardless whether it's the research or extension committee, our expectations in a candidate are what are their scholarship, and scholarship will look different between extension and research as to what we include in that category and what we emphasize in that category. What's the impact of the person in their research field or their extension field? What kind of leadership have they done either on a regional, statewide, or particularly as you get to professor national, international levels. And those are three elements, regardless, that when you look at the candidate, that we want to answer the question, how are they performing and how are they showing themselves in these areas?
I think it's good.
Okay. So again, bottom line is we'll get to now the committees and talk more through. I would say that if someone has a teaching appointment or are teaching on an overload basis, the way that we're handling O2 contributions is that the department head, we will look to them to make the assessment as to whether that person is performing well in their official teaching role. Or as an overload. Again, any official teaching responsibilities, that we're looking to the department head to write in their letter an evaluation based off of their departmental's procedures for evaluating teaching contributions, to write in their letter what the evaluation is on the teaching contribution of that particular candidate, and not necessarily something that, from your standpoint, as a committee, that you will take into consideration, other than knowing that this person has an 85% appointment and not a not 100% appointment, and their duties and their contributions should reflect that somewhat reduced appointments in either research or extension. Not sure if I said that right, Sandy, but any thoughts on that?
No, I think, Jim, I think this is sort of addresses a little bit of your question about the relative roles of center director letters and department head letters, that this is a case where I think the department head's input is going to be extremely valuable in the overall evaluation of the candidates' contributions. But again, we're going to see this year how well this all works.
You bet. And we do expect service contributions both to the agency, to the department, to the centers. So regardless, that is something that's very important. Collegiality, as well as service to stakeholders, external stakeholders. We also see that important regardless of percent appointments.
Okay.
Before we go to this, on the previous section, I have a question.
Okay.
On the letters, now that we have been a little more flexible, i.e. we can request from any expert around the world or what have you. Have we considered maybe going beyond academics, like what I mean by that is USDA or other scientists that we were not allowed before, as well as if there is a for example, in extension or even in research, the regional commodity president or what have you, maybe they can, the comment would be valuable. Are we open to those types of things yet?
I can try to answer that, Dan, and yes, USDA personnel are good to be external reviewers. Again, with every external reviewer that's used, a short biography that that demonstrates why they're the expert in the field, and so USDA scientists that you collaborate with or that are experts in particular areas that can evaluate the candidate at arm's length. Can't be a co-PI or co-publish the specific rules, but that would be acceptable. I'm a little unsure about being a commodity president because they don't have the academic institutional experience, and I'm sure they will probably give a very detailed and fair evaluation of the person's contribution to that particular commodity, but may not be able to judge publications, fact sheets, all of the other things as far as an academic review of those things. So
these types of requests will be very few and far between anyway, very, very rare, but just want to make sure that, if there is a opportunity in the future that.
And again, if what we'd like is a minimum of 4, and we try not to exceed 7. So if one of the 7 is this, then the peer review committee can basically read that, take it into account or not take it into account, because you have sufficient numbers of academically qualified people also evaluating.
So in the process, in the process document, the way that we said we would handle this is that we're looking at people that have academic or government entities or somebody that's a professor that's part of an institute, as Sandy has talked about, would fit in the external category. We are willing to receive from external stakeholders, which would be the president of the commodity group, but that would go into another category called other documents,
sure,
which would be presented and left there and could be reviewed by the committee, and that's up to the committee as to what weight they put on those other documents. We're not necessarily encouraging that because we don't want 100 documents saying this person should get promoted. We really want those 4 to 7 people that have that either come from a university background or government or some sort of research institutes or government agency, something like that.
I just, and again, we're not trying to overwork you as members of the peer review committee by make you read too many different documents.
Yeah, that's fair. Very good.
So I would start off, I'm going to have Sandy talk through this. I would want to start out, because I don't know if it's written in here, is that the membership of both committees is not for public information. So it's not something that we want you to go say, hey, I'm a member of this committee. We're not publicizing it anywhere. I'm sure through freedom of information that it would be given, but in our at this point, we're not letting people know who's on the peer review committee, because we believe that that is a better practice from your standpoint as to helping keep you out of a position that could be, where people might be trying to influence you in some form or fashion. Not that you are influential, that could even happen, but we're just trying to make sure that we do our due diligence in that. So, Sandy, why don't you talk us through this document?
Okay, all right, thanks, Dan. So again, I think we've all served on committees together, grant panels or evaluatory committees, but again, we just want to emphasize that you as members of the peer review committee play a critical role in maintaining quality and integrity of AgriLife research and extension. So the goals of this short document are just sort of best practices to be equitable to all candidates, mitigate implicit bias, and really encourage constructive evaluation of each candidate's performance based on their position descriptions. All members of the committee, you are selected because you are all considered experts in your field. And so we value all of your inputs on this. And so we really want all members of the committee to feel that they're equals and their voices will all be heard. And again, this is a very sensitive matter when you're looking at evaluation and promotion. So confidentiality is critically important. And Dan, you want to scroll down a little bit?
Yep.
And again, I'm not going to beat a horse with this, but confidentiality. Please don't discuss outside the committee meeting with other people, because word does get around, and you don't want to jeopardize the anonymity and the equity of the process. You can see the associate directors or directors can come back if there are other questions that they have, and they will talk to the chairs of the committee. And again, objectivity is important. And also, when things are somewhat difficult, it's important to follow the process. And so, you can always disagree with the outcome of a process, but we don't want to find fault in the way the process was performed, because that's the ground for appeals. And so if the process has been followed correctly, the outcome is going to be more certain. Review of dossiers, again, as Dan mentioned, we have clear timelines. Training, that we're doing a training for reviewers. As you can see, each candidate will have a primary, secondary, and possibly a tertiary reviewer. We leave that up to the committee chairs. Reasonable efforts have been made to ensure impartiality of all the reviewers. And one of the things we learned, Dan and I learned, that when we try to come up with a number of senior faculty members to serve on the peer review committee that are ad hoc majority research or extension, you can't have one as a department head. I can't have somebody from 10 out of 15 departments. You're going to have members of your committee that are also in the same department that you're affiliated with. So in the case of research, I've tried to distribute by location, area of focus of the programs too, to get an equal representation. And as you can read that again, external review letters, only required for promotion, not for midterm reviews. Represent a mix of candidate and supervisor evaluators, and that's up to the department head or the center director to make sure it's a mix. And I know as a department head, I've come up with a name for a faculty, and guess what? It's been on the faculty's list as well. But I take that as being in agreement that we both think this is a professional expert that might be a valuable external evaluator. The candidate is allowed to support a do not contact list. And so those external evaluation letters will not be allowed to come from the people on the no contact list. One of the things that as a peer reviewer, when you look at external evaluators, Megan, this also kind of comes back to your question. Is the reviewer from a aspirational peer or peer institution? Is the reviewer highly regarded in the field? Is the letter that they write, I mean, if you get 4 lines, so-and-so published 6 papers, I heard him talk in a meeting, I think he's doing fine. I don't give a lot of weight to that. So if somebody gives me a much more quantitative evaluation of a candidate, I'm going to put more weight on that letter than another letter. But that's what the peer review committee expertise is. And again, your summary report for each of the peer will reflect the peer review committee's evaluation of the candidate. And again, collegiality, we all want to be collegial. We know that we all have different personalities. Some of us are extroverted, some of us are introverted. But again, collegiality is going to be important to make sure that it's a fair evaluation of the candidate. All right, and then I think the next one is just on the committee report. It's a single report, unambiguously communicating the strength and areas for improvement of the candidate in their responsibilities in the core subject areas as defined in the position description. So it has to represent the discussions that the entire committee had with the overall committee's recommendation regarding the progression and trajectory of accomplishments towards promotion, and that's the midterm, or for promotion for associate or full. And the vote tally of the full committee must be included in the report. If there's dissenting votes, simply vote no. But there's not going to be a separate letters added to the report that conveys that. You simply would vote no. And again, overcoming implicit bias. We all battle this all the time. I know I have areas of science that just get me really excited and other areas of science that, okay. And I have to fight those implicit biases when I make evaluations of things. And so, and I have here a brief video on bias. I haven't found one yet, but I know they exist. But I'm thinking we're all pretty well senior faculty members. Operation of the committee. Again, thank you, David and Jackie, for chairing the committees. You can elect a co-chair to assist the chair as needed. And again, we'll assign primary, secondary, and tertiary reviewers. Again, as you can see, the primary reviewer, at this point, it's very similar if you've served on a promotion and tenure committee before. So I don't want to go too long on this, but it's very much like a grant panel. Primary will present the qualifications of the candidate. The secondary will add things and bring up other points. And then there will be group discussion. We can ask the tertiary if there's any points of clarification that are needed, because they will have read that. And again, we ask every committee member to read every dossier. So you may have a primary, secondary, or tertiary, but it's our responsibility as peer reviewers to have read through every dossier. And again, for the midterms, we only have 2, I think, in research, and we only have 2 in extension. So it's a good jumping off point to get going. Once there's a letter, the primary will summarize. That will be circulated among the committee, and Dan can talk more about how we're going to make it so that you have access to this at a central site. But then overall, you'll all agree, and then the final letter will be uploaded to Interfolio RPT by the chair using the administrative staff. And again, Dan and I are really looking to make this better and better and better. So we really do value your comments as we go through the process.
I would say, just in addition to that, from a communication standpoint, if you have questions or you have issues during the meetings or have concerns about potential bias or anything, you should talk to the chair, who then will talk with us. And so the chair is our liaison with the committee. So we don't have direct contact with the committee. We will have direct contact with the chair. The chair is a non-voting member. of the committee. We did that on purpose so that person could act as a fair and balanced liaison, both within the committee, but also then liaison with us as well. So just know that that's a kind of the mode of communications. If you have issues or questions or problems or have things that you think would work better, that would go to the chair. All right.
And I just said, Dan and I will be keeping a running tally of your suggestions. So even, so it won't be a one-time only, you can give us suggestions.
Good. So I would just finish up by saying there is one case that, again, another good test case. Let's see if I have that window up, of a joint appointment. There's this document, if you go to the promotion and tenure page that we had shared with you earlier, if you go to that, there's a joint appointment document. So in that, it actually has some specifics that will describe the promotion process. So promotion request and midterm reviews. And so I encourage you as a committee, both committees, to review that as you go through and review this document. In this case, this person will have a faculty with a majority extension appointment. And so it talks about supervision and promotion for that joint appointments. So this person is a center-based, but also departments of entomology. And so this is going to be a really good test because there are potentially 3 letters that will be written for this person when it's all said and done. So as far as supervisor letters. But from that standpoint, we would ask that both committees review this candidate's dossier. The research would evaluate the research contribution, in this case 25%, which you'd expect for somebody with a 25% minority research appointment, and at the same time give recommendations as to see how, whether that candidate might improve. So not just, make sure that the midterm is where we want to give them the best path forward as to future potential promotion. So we need input on both sides. We would expect a vote from both committees. So we would expect both committees to vote. We expect everyone to vote. And we want no abstentions. And also even though that is an option, and no absences. So everyone on the committee must vote. There's a potential of recusing. Recuse would again be a conversation that you would have with the chair. If you feel like there is a conflict of interest or or some other particular issue that you feel like you must recuse yourself from. But just because you're in that person's department, you do not, or at that center, you do not, we would expect you really to vote still yes or no, unless you had some other compelling reason to recuse yourself. Those votes will be done based off of, I'm going to stop sharing now because I think Alyssa is here. I think the next best thing before we break up is to talk about just Interfolio. I know on the research side, maybe you guys have it all figured out, but on the extension side, not everybody even knows how to get into their Interfolio, which shouldn't be the case, but I think it might be in some cases. So Alyssa, would you kind of talk us through what the peer review committee is going to see in these midterms? First of all, how to get into Interfolio, going back to the same issue we had when we had the candidate hour today, and making sure that they're in the right place when they go. So thank you.
Yes, sir. No problem. Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. My name is Alyssa. I've been assisting Dr. Hale and Dr. Pearson in the departments with setting up your cases and Interfolio for the departments. So I'm going to share my screen momentarily here just so we can see how I'm going to log into Interfolio. Can we see my Google screen here?
Yes.
All right, lovely. So I'm going to type in TAMU Interfolio into the search bar. And my first option here is going to be the SSO login for Interfolio. So I'm going to access that. Perfect. I was hoping I wasn't still signed in because that would have been confusing. The institution we're going to search to sign in is going to be Texas A&M University. So I'm going to click the university option. I'm going to sign in, and when I do that, it's going to take us to the central authentication A&M, so you're going to log in with your A&M. And because I'm an administrator for Interfolio for the college, I'm able to see these current cases at this step, since it's at the college step. So please disregard these cases, but if you are on the committee and the case has been sent to you for your review, this is what your screen would look like. You would have an access to the individual's case. And then from this next step, you can access the case by clicking on the name. My apologies. Dr. Hale had just mentioned, if this page does not look like this, if you do not see a faculty search and positions and promotion and tenure on this left-hand side, what we're going to recommend you do is click on the top right, and underneath this switch account option, you very well might be logged into either AgriLife, Research, or Extension. We're going to ask you to please go to Texas A&M University. And when you access that, you will then come to this page. And like I said, when the time's right, when the case is sent to you for the review, you'll be able to access the cases at that point. So I think that's about all I have right now. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to help. And I'll stick around for any questions. So thank you all.
So we will have Alyssa helping us. Also, my assistant, Lindsay, will help you, Lindsay Shepard, and then also Rachel, Dr. Pearson's assistant, will help you. So we have 3 people there to help you make sure you get into Interfolio. And once you get in there, then you're going to have things to look at. So you might, I don't know if it's possible to share Alyssa with them, and maybe looking even at the back side where they'll see promotion, position description, impact statements. And
Sure. Yeah, absolutely, Dr. Hale. I'll at least pull up a template for the full term extension for now, and I'll pull up research as well. But just so you all are able to see what it's going to look like. So this is the template that I created for soil and crop sciences. I'm going to click around a little quick, but now this main page, when you're accessing the case, you'll have your case broken down by the candidate requirements, the internal case sections. You'll also be able to see the steps, what all happens. So and it's broken down all by sections here. So I'm going to just go real quick and make this a little bit easier for us to read.
While you're doing that, I would say the faculty 180 VITA is not anything that we are using on our side in research and extension. So that where it says faculty 180 VITA, just ignore that, skip over that. Now back to you, Melissa.
Thanks, Dr. Hale. So for the candidate requirements section, they will see what is needed to upload before they can move on to the next step. And now the candidate will either be working individually or with the department head assistant for uploads, but that's beside the point. So the first section, you have the candidate position description. There is a hyperlink, an active link for step-by-step directions to pull the position description for the candidate. We'll also have a section for their impact statement, their curriculum vitae, research, financial program support summary chart, and then the candidate external reviewer checklist. The one thing that the candidate's going to be mindful that they are going to need to do is complete the verification of content statement. It's very simple, takes less than 60 seconds. The candidate's going to go in, and I'm going to preview this so we can see what the candidate will look like when they go to complete this. It's a very simple page. So they're going to just check the boxes that they provided. They're going to agree that the items that they checked above are the most up-to-date and accurately describing documents. And then they need to put the date that they verified these statements. Once they click done, that saves, and the candidate has completed their step that's required for them. And like I said, it all depends on which department, how they're doing it, but this is the most important piece for them to complete, or else the case will not be able to go to the next step. Yep. And then any COVID statements or any other supplemental documentation will go into other documents. And then once you all get the case for review, you'll be able to see all the other items that were added on the departmental level, including the department external reviewer checklist, the external reviewer chart, any biographies, and then you'll be able to add the report as well. So I hope this helps so you can see a little bit what's going to be coming your way. And more than happy to assist anyone, if you have any questions or want to see anything more in detail, please let me know. But I'm grateful to provide an overview this afternoon, and I'm happy to assist. So thank you all.
So you be using Interfolio to evaluate each candidate, and we will also be using a My Planner within the team structure to actually manage discussions, voting, and the construction of the report that will then go to Interfolio. So you'll use Interfolio to review each candidate's materials, but the heart of the activities with the committee will be within another template, which we will show you individually as a group, but you will be assigned, if you haven't already been assigned, to teams, My Planner within teams, which will manage, first of all, committee discussions, teams, meetings that you might have as a committee. It will then also allow you to upload and develop reports together with your primary, secondary, tertiary reviewers, share those reports with the entire committee, extension documents, just extension, research, just research. Again, there'll be two separate entities. The one, a joint document, you'll be able to see that only that documents across both peer review groups. And then ultimately there'll be a vote that will be taken through this particular platform as well, that will be recorded confidentially. And so that information will be provided in the near future. And Lindsay will be reaching out if she hasn't already. I've been gone, so she may have, just letting you know that how to connect with that particular software platform.
So, Alyssa, can I'll raise my hand. We had a question from Juan Enciso that is there a place in Interfolio for the position description? And I think you just went through that.
There is, but Juan is with horticulture, and on the call earlier, horticulture has not had any cases built, or you know what I'm saying? So that's why he's not seeing anything updated, is because.
Okay.
So I actually did reach out to them and pending a response. So we'll make sure that he can see that as well, Juan.
Okay, thank you.